Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel Egli. I'm from Switzerland. I'm the project manager of manufacturing skills. I have about 20 years experience in the industries and 7 years of experience in the academic world in Switzerland and also in India. Please be welcome to my webinar. My webinar has a title, Dual System in Vocational Education and Training and the Embedding in the Education System. First, I would like to show you the agenda of my presentation. Here, I just quickly need to open this. First, I talk about the dual system in vocational training, what it exactly means. Then how we embed it, or the embedding of the vocational training in the Swiss education system. Then I would like to make a comparison of the different education profiles, because so many times I have been asked how the Bachelor of Vocational can be compared to a B.Tech profile. Then at the very end, I would like to talk about the modification, which had been required to implement the vocational training in the Indian education system. First, the dual system in the vocational education training is nothing more than a combination of a school where you're meant to learn all the theoretical parts of a specific profession and also some basic practical parts of this chosen profession. 30% of the time we spend at those schools and training centers, and 70% of the time we spend at the company where we are making a contract, where we are actually employed. We are spending 70% of our time, of our education in those companies where we learn all the skills required for the chosen profession. Actually, the roots in the Swiss vocational training system goes back to the 9th century. We needed many stonemasons and master builders, basically for building or construction of the churches and other fundamental constructions like bridges. But at the end of the 18th century, the French Revolution changed the shape of Europe, not only the shape of different borders of different countries, also the shape of the society, how we are working with each other. This led for a short period of 100 years where the regulation of vocational training didn't exist anymore in Switzerland. It took us something like 80, 90 years to find the way back because there had been no more Swiss skilled manpower anymore, and there was a heavy competition in Europe. And with those two chambers, the Swiss Chamber of Commerce, the Swiss Commercial Association, together with the industries which had been growing in Switzerland, they decided to go back to organized vocational education training with adaptation from the system that we had in the past when the Guild had been organizing all those education trainings. And since then, our training is actually continuously updated according to the needs of the business and society, until to the present form what we are having. How we integrate now the vocational training in the Swiss education system can be seen now on this graph. Here in this box, we see the upper secondary level in vocational education training. It is actually in the same time when other fellows are doing their +2, or in Switzerland we call it Bachelor VET. We can do also a 2 to 5-year apprenticeship, depends on the industry or on the profession, how long this internship, how this apprenticeship really takes place. Excuse me, to learn a specific profession. Afterwards, we also can do further education on the tertiary level, so with some certificate programs, diploma programs, but also we can do a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science degree program at the University of Applied Sciences. The difference between those University of Applied Science with the traditional universities like ETH, in a traditional university, you do more fundamental research. And in a University of Applied Science, you're more meant to apply those fundamental research results to a specific problem. So we also can say that universities of applied science, they're somehow responsible for the innovation. It's the place where invention meets a market, which can be combined together, and this is how innovation takes place. 2/3 of all young people coming out of compulsory education in Switzerland, actually, they enroll in vocational training because it is so attractive to do it. This gives a ratio of 1/3 to 2/3 academic the craftsmen or experts to vocational experts. This is a very good ratio because some, they plan the work and others, they have to do the work. And here in Europe, we have 2 persons which are doing the work and 1 person which is planning the work. The vocational education and training, so the apprenticeships, they are actually determined always by the private sectors and the current and the future needs of the labor market. And as I said in the very beginning, it is one part is classroom instructed, 30% of it, and on the other hand, we have the workplace training, where the apprentices are in their host company or in their company and doing their training upon the requirements of the market. We also know a school-based variety of vocational education training programs, because 10% of the practical training has to be done under guidance of highly skilled professional trainers. Normally, we do that in workshops for so-called Swiss mechanics, if you're following a profile of polymechanics in manufacturing skills. But you also can do the vocational training full-time in a training center. It is called AZW, or it's also in Bern, we have LIPS, or we also have Laderen. There, you're doing some full-time training for 1 or 2 years, and afterwards you are going to an internship for another 1 year or 2 years. Depends on your contract and depends on your profession. So those kind of training centers, they are very, very much similar to what we are doing also in BSTU, the Bartia Skill Development University. Here in the tertiary level professional education, where you can make a PET or CT, so a diploma or a certificate program, or where you can become a master or a bachelor in science. Those programs, they're always built up from an upper secondary level training. Because it provides you with very specific competences, which prepares you for more challenging positions in a company. those certificates and diploma programs, they are on this side. And as I told you at the beginning, the bachelor and the master programs, we can do actually at the universities of applied science in 57 different study programs, also in 8 different professional fields. But a very, very high advantage of the Swiss education system is the high permeability between the academic and also the vocational professional variety in education. How this looks, I would like to explain more on this slide. Here on the right side, we are having the academic education. It's a general education and universities combination, where we are doing a +9 years general education schools and a +4 instead of +2. And then afterwards, we are going to a university and also to obtain a PhD at the end is possible. On the left side, we are having the vocational education training path, where we start with apprenticeships, and then we are doing a certificate or a diploma in a specific field. And here in the middle, as I was telling you before, where we can do a vocational education training, an apprenticeship, and afterwards we can do a bachelor or a master degree. This is actually my education path in a specific field. And now the high permeability between the worlds, they are visible here with those arrows. The black arrows are the normal path where we can actually enroll ourselves in the next level without doing any kind of certification. But if I want to do, for example, after my +4, not +2, directly a bachelor degree or a master degree in mechanical engineering, I can do an internship in a company, and then with this internship and this recommendation letter, I can enroll myself in a university of applied science and can also do a path or a part of the education of the vocational education training scheme as someone who came from an academic program. And the inverse is also possible when I start first with vocational education training instead of the +3. I can do a bridge course. We call those kind of things bridge courses, which are making me eligible to apply for a seat in a university in Switzerland, for example, ETH. And but we need to be honest at this point. Those bridge courses or also those internships, they are very, very demanding. It is very interesting to do this kind of education in Switzerland, but this is most likely the hardest way to do your education. To start first with a vocational education program and do at the very end a PhD in mechanical engineering at ETH. This is really, really demanding. When we look or when you think in investments, so time is always an investment, not only money. When we think how much we have to invest in a vocational education training and with a follow certificate program, then we can say a Swiss professional on the stream of vocational education and continuous training, he strengthened his qualification with 9,000 hours of training after compulsory education. If we do the same calculation for this middle part, or this mixture between vocational education training and academic world, such a fellow, he has to study approximately 13,500 hours because the bachelor and master program is quite long compared to a certificate the tertiary level. And when we think of a purely academic education, here we have to say a Swiss has to invest something about 17,500 hours after compulsory education. But as a PhD student, normally we have a salary in Switzerland, and also this duration of time depends how much time you need for your PhD. We estimate something like 6,000 to 8,000 hours, but this can be completely different. If you're looking now on the different profiles, so I would like to explain it in this way on the hand of this graph. If you look on the x-axis, you see the bandwidth of skills, knowledge axis. And on the y-axis, here we see the level of training of skills. So the penetration actually of the skills that you had learned. When we make this comparison between the vocational education training with a certificate program compared to a vocational education training to a graduation program, and also the comparison to a purely academic program, we see first, for the academics, we need to invest most of the time, 17,500 hours. This gives you a huge bandwidth of your skills and of your knowledge. When we think of an engineer in Apple, for example, when he designs a new software or a new iPhone, he needs to know something about mechanical engineering. He needs to know something about software engineering. He needs to know about marketing. He needs to know about so many things that he can lead his team. When we look at the fellow who did his vocational education training with a certificate program, his bandwidth of skills is not that huge. It is quite small. So, for example, in manufacturing skills, you learn all the skills and knowledge required for manufacturing of metal parts. And this we see with this very high peak, so with the penetration of the skills afterwards. So you are a professional in manufacturing skills, but we do not learn something about software engineering in the direction of manufacturing skills. This gives this nice combination of people who did an apprenticeship or a vocational education training together with someone who did his engineering in an academic institution. This is very much important in Switzerland. So because we want to have a high quality. The high quality we achieve with high-skilled professionals of systems which are very complicated, and the design, the layout of those complicated systems, this is done by the academics. And this here, this curve in the middle, those are the fellows who did their vocational education training and their graduation, a bachelor or a master's in mechanical engineering. Here we see they also have a specific peak in a certain skill, for example, manufacturing skills, but they have a wider knowledge in different areas. So it is a mixture of both the world. It is also a connection position, what you're normally taking place in a company. So, and how we now integrate this dual system in vocational training in India, or basically in ESTU. On the left side, you see the Indian education system in a simplified form. You start with primary, followed by secondary, higher secondary, the +2, and then also graduation, what you can do in 4 or 5 years, which is followed by post-graduation. So we implemented now the vocational education training here in this graduation period in the tertiary sector with a bachelor and a followed master of vocational, where we learn all the practical parts of a specific profession, like manufacturing skills in our school, but also where you learn many things in general education, like Indian history, also like personal development. So all those required knowledge domains for obtaining a bachelor. Afterwards, you also are allowed to do a post-graduation. And this takes place at BSTU, where we also offer specific certificate programs after BTech course, for example. To earn a Bachelor of Vocational degree at BSTU, it requires an investment of approximately 6,000 hours to work and study. This is because we are having 6 semesters, so in 3 years we are able to do our bachelor's at BSTU. For a master, you need also to calculate an additional 4,000 hours for study and work. And the concept of training at BSTU, actually, we are having this dual system. This means we are doing 3 academic semesters at the training center in BSTU, where you learn all the fundamentals in a specific profession. And then afterwards, you are going for 3 semesters to an internship. So in the 2nd semester, in the 4th semester, in the 6th semester, you're in an internship and apply all the learned things from the uneven semesters in those internship semesters. During your training at BSTU in the uneven semester, in the 1st, 3rd, and 5th semester, we are following the one workplace, one student policy. So every student has to have its own workplace where the student can do its own work, because otherwise skills cannot be taught or not be learned without doing all those work steps by the student by themselves. And additionally, what we know in BSTU is a flexible entry and exit policy. This means if you need to do a break in your education, this is not a problem. You can do a break for 6 months, for 1 year, 1.5 years, and come back and complete your education at BSTU. We also follow a strict discipline. When the lecturing is starting, it starts. We cannot wait until everyone appears in their own order. It is also due to the requirements of the industries. They need people or workers which are on time and which are reliable. Also, an advantage of BSTU, we have a high trainer to student ratio, so that an individual training is granted at BSTU. This is how we do that. And also a big advantage of the training in BSTU, because of those 3 internship semesters, you can earn while you learn, because during the internship semester, you are getting some stipends according to the industry and depends on the profession what you have learned. So thank you very much for attending my webinar. I hope you have a small impression now from the training according to the dual system, and also that you know a bit more about BSTU. If you're interested, please follow us and please visit us, and maybe also take admission at BSTU in any kind of profession that you are liking and what you would like to do in future times. Thank you very much. Have a good time. Bye-bye.